Okay, we'll begin with announcements. Exactly 28 years ago, on October 4, 1993, a group of Tredyffrin residents, namely Bob Hasey, Walt Harlos, Ralph Ernest, Dick Walkling, and Al Little, borrowed audiovisual gear from Harron Communications in order to record the Tredyffrin Board of Supervisors meeting for television for the first time. Today, T-SPAN volunteers Michael Trowbridge and Alan Ross continue that tradition by making these meetings available on our Township public access TV channels, live on YouTube, and accessible later on video on demand online. So thank you, gentlemen, for carrying on that tradition. Next.
We did get a thumbs up from back in the studio, so that's...
Construction on the Drummers Lane Bridge over Trout Creek was completed and the bridge reopened to traffic on September 13. Next, Pew Road culvert replacement, that's between West Valley Road and Valley Forge Road, remains closed to traffic because of damage sustained in the August 19 and September 1st tropical storms Fred and Ida. Township designs are completed, permits submitted to PAYDEP, and the coordination is ongoing with local utility providers Aqua and Pico. Construction for the removal and replacement of the culvert is expected to start and finish in 2022. Next, there is one open position on the Park and Rec Board and 2 open positions on the Library Board of Trustees. If you are interested in volunteering to serve, please submit a letter of interest and a brief resume to tredyffrin@tredyffrin.org. In observance of Columbus Day, Township offices will be closed Monday, October 11. Now we go to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve minutes of September 20, 2021 public meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving to Township business. The board met in executive session before this meeting to discuss legal matters. We go to Supervisor Liaison reports, and starting to my right, Supervisor Humble.
Thank you, Chairman Wazaki. Regarding the Parks and Recreation Board, I want to report that we met last month, and one of the large things that happened, in addition to the usual things that we go over, is that the Parks and Rec Foundation sent 3 members who were there to discuss how they can help the Parks and Recreation Board with raising money and what our wish list might be for projects that they could help to pay for. Additionally, I have submitted for today a motion to authorize staff to review and update the Parks and Recreation Ordinance, that's Chapter 138 and Chapter 35, so that we can help bring the parks regulations and the Parks and Recreation Board's stated powers and duties into compliance and alignment with modern preemptive and federal laws, as well as our modern administrative practices and procedures that control and inform the way the township is governed. Some examples of the incongruencies is that the park ordinance presently purports to give Park and Recreation Board mandatory language vesting power to issue permits for myriad uses of township parks. That's something that our actual township staff does these days. Power to pass controlling resolutions regarding specific times that groups of more than 15 people can gather for any reason, such as parties, sporting activities, playgroups, to watch fireworks, for sledding. And again, that's outdated, and we don't actually limit that in every case. For example, sole approval authority for the placement of any unauthorized item, including sporting equipment, shrubs, planting, which even the word unauthorized kind of confuses me, because if somebody's going to go do something in the name of the township, it's usually authorized what Public Works is doing. I understand what they mean, but it's not clear how it comes out. General supervision over all township parks, including all maintenance thereof and replacements of property and equipment therein, which is something that Public Works actually takes care of. Responsibility for the cleanliness and/or the general public health and welfare of the township parks. Again, that's something that in actuality Public Works is taking care of, and that responsibility should not be on Parks and Recreation Board. The right to control access to the township's parks and playgrounds area, again, that's not a responsibility or an authority that the Parks and Recreation Board should have or actually uses. That falls within township staff. And then there's language purporting to limit the township's ability to enact a fee schedule for park permits to a requirement that the Parks and Recreation Board first make a recommendation to the township. So in that case, that would mean the Board of Supervisors would be limited from even considering it unless it first comes from the Parks and Rec Board up. Additionally, I'm moving that we reduce the term of service on the Parks and Recreation Board from 5 years, which is high compared to the other terms, down to 3 years, which is in keeping with the terms of service for the Environmental Advisory Council, the Library Board of Trustees, and the Historical Commission. Finally, in Chapter 35, it has such incongruencies as giving the Parks and Recreation Board the authority to equip, supervise, operate, and maintain parks, recreation areas, and facilities, and to conduct recreation programs. These days, township staff handles all of the recreation programs, and Public Works handles, again, all of the maintenance and upgrades to our parks. And number 2, Chapter 35 also states that the Parks and Rec Board may employ play leaders, recreation directors, supervisors, superintendents, and any other officers or employees as it deems proper, and shall establish standards, qualifications, and salary schedules for all such recreation employees, provided that those standards shall be approved by the Board of Supervisors. So in that way, under modern state and federal law, the Parks and Recreation Board cannot control the hiring and firing of township personnel when it's a part-time board of directors who does not supervise these personnel day to day, and in terms with federal and state law regarding employment laws, HIPAA laws, employee privacy laws, and the matter. So that's the reason for these suggested changes. So that's all that I have for my report. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Humble, and we will address that motion when we get to it here in the agenda. Supervisor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman Wysocki. I have one update for the Planning Commission tonight, and that is that I would like to thank Bill Roundtree for his service to our community, and also make a motion to reappoint him to the Planning Commission for a new term.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to reappoint Bill Roundtree to the Planning Commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Supervisor Gussie.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate the Environmental Advisory Council and the Tredyffrin Rain Garden team on completing their first rain garden. I urge everyone to visit the Tredyffrin Public Library to see the rain garden. It was a tremendous amount of effort, including, in addition to the design and the planning, it was a full day of work for many volunteers to install the garden. It's just very exciting to see this program coming to fruition. This past weekend, the EAC and the Park Foundation jointly held a celebration of the rain garden outside of the Tredyffrin Library at a very successful and fun Tredyffrin Roots Festival. So again, congratulations on successfully kicking off the Tredyffrin Rain Garden program. And I will hold off on my other liaison updates as both the Stormwater Task Force and the Fire Infrastructure Committee have big updates later in the agenda.
Thank you, Supervisor Gussie. Supervisor Holt.
Thank you. Good evening. As I've mentioned before, there will be a special meeting of the Tredyffrin Zoning Hearing Board tomorrow, October 5th at 7 p.m. to hear the substantivity challenge by Finnery LLC in Greenbridge Development to 355 Chase Road, which is otherwise known as a portion of Picket Post, to challenge its zoning as rural conservation recreational. I encourage all affected Chesterbrook members to attend this meeting. Personally, as liaison to the ZHB, I've received scores and scores of correspondence from concerned constituents unanimously against the change to the zoning, and I look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Holt. Supervisor Freed.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do not have a report tonight.
Supervisor Basker.
So neither the Traffic Committee nor the Library Board of Trustees met since my last report. However, I would like to, we have since had a resignation of Tim Ross, who is the Vice Chair of the Library Board of Trustees. He's resigned effective the end of the month. I would like to thank him for his service. And earlier, Chair Wasaki talked about 2 openings in the Library Board of Trustees. So the first one was from John C.T. Alexander, whose announcement was announced previously. The second one is from Tim Ross. So again, I'd like to thank Tim Ross for his service, because the Library Board of Trustees really runs on volunteer power, and we need all the volunteers. And I also have a motion to appoint Anthony Ferris and Helen Yao, to reappoint, Anthony Ferris and Helen Yao to the Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Supervisor Basker. We have a motion to reappoint Anthony Ferris and Helen Yao to the Library Board of Trustees. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and anticipating no board comment and no citizen comment, I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, now we're going to our next item on the agenda, and we have an update from U.S. Representative Chrissy Houlihan, and the update is from Scott Nelson.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here tonight, and it's my first time at Tredyffrin. My purpose tonight is just to let our constituents know many of the things that we have done for them and what we can do for them. Our office is based in Westchester, and we serve Chester County and Southern Berks County in the U.S. House of Representatives. And most of what we do is considered constituent services in the district. So if a person has a problem with some aspect of the federal government, maybe they haven't gotten their stimulus check or their tax refund, Social Security benefits, VA benefits, any federal benefit whatsoever, we can be your advocate with that agency or that department to get a positive outcome. It can be very difficult to interface with the federal government as just a regular person. Other things we do, we work for passports, State Department, Medicare, Medicaid, GI benefits, things like that. Also, we help townships and nonprofit organizations with letters of support in the event that they're applying for a federal grant. And we have a staffer whose job is to do that, and our office has been very successful securing millions of dollars in federal monies for municipalities. We also have an internship program, congressional internship program. We hire about 10 in the district and 10 in DC per year. We're actually currently looking for 1 intern. So this is a program for college students or those recent graduates from college who might be interested in a career in service, government service. We also have the honor of nominating, Chrissy has the honor of nominating people to the military, the service academies, and I think we get 10 nomination slots per year. Finally, if you're ever visiting Washington and you would like tickets to any of the cultural institutions, the White House, Capitol Building, some of the museums, we can get tickets for those. They're free, but because of COVID, the entry is timed and you have to have tickets, so we can help with that, and there's that information is on our website. Finally, I wanted to let you know that after Hurricane Ida came through, we pushed to get a FEMA disaster center open in Chester County, and that opened in Downingtown at the Ashbridge Square Shopping Center. So for people who had personal property damage due to that storm, that is located at 945 East Lancaster Avenue in Downingtown. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturday, 10 to 5. Additionally, if a person incurred small business, if their small business was damaged, we also have the SBA operating out of the Chester County Economic Development Council offices, and they're in Exton, and their number is 800-621-3362. And then I would like to just close, before if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take any questions. I wanted to just give a quick legislative update on what was for Chester County and Pennsylvania in the American Rescue Plan that we passed earlier this year. This was total, $36 billion for state and local school districts and boards of education. $32 billion, Chrissy got an amendment in for veterans crisis counseling and a crisis line. There's an epidemic of suicide among our veteran communities, and this is meant to address that. $213 million for child development centers. We got some infrastructure money. We had about $2 million for the borough of Sinking Springs to realign their roadways, which is something they had reached out to us asking, and we would love to know if Tredyffrin has any needs. I'll leave some cards, by the way. We also got $4 billion for passenger rail improvement throughout the U.S., and most of that money is targeted for the Northeast Corridor, Amtrak, and also freight rail improvement where Amtrak shares those lines. So I don't want to go through the whole American Rescue Plan, but there were numerous things for Chester County in there, and we hope that that as the president's agenda is put forward further in this Congress, that we will be sure to bring home more projects to Chester County. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none. I'll leave some cards with Patricia, and if anyone would like to email me later, just grab one from her, and if we run out, Patricia knows. Good night.
Thank you, Scott. That was informative and just the right length, so thank you.
Thank you.
So, next is the Stormwater Task Force update from the inimitable Ray Clark.
Hopefully also informative and just the right length, if we can manage that. Just one thing to say, that I'm really just a spokesperson here for the task force. There are a lot of folks on the task force who've been working really hard, particularly Anne Murphy, who's the co-chair, and I won't list all the others, but it's really been a group effort, and I hope that everybody recognizes that, as I say, I'm just a spokesperson here. Last time we were in front of you was May. It seems like a lifetime ago. We had a public meeting at the end of June, and we focused on resident issues and projects and high-level recommendations, and we were going to take the input and be done by the end of the summer. And then we had those summer storms, and that really messed things up. Not only have we spent now a month personally cleaning up in the nature preserves and so on, but we also had to add a lot of issues into the database. And kind of come to grips with what it meant to have a 1 in 500 year or 1,000 year, depending on how you measure it, event. And I think there's some messages that are kind of really important for the board and the public to understand, which is that the township really can't engineer for those extreme events. It obviously has stressed the infrastructure in ways that maybe we weren't expecting, that will require investment. But residents should, I think, expect that they themselves will have to, going just to the last point there, figure out where they're vulnerable and recognize everybody is in this together. But if I now skip back up, the messages we have for the township of starting with identifiable projects with very real benefits that are prioritized, that work in partnership with all the other agencies that are involved, PennDOT, residents themselves, our neighbors in Valley Forge Park, for example. That partnership is a big part of the answer here. Having the resources and the personal resources and the funding to do all of that is important, and then to communicate to residents. So those themes come back from our May presentations. They're still very much in place. So where are we now? We have all the way along worked with the township staff. We've had meetings with Stephen and with Darren talking about projects that could be got underway right away, and I think we've seen some benefit from that already. And we have got really close to finalizing our final reports. And we're going to give you just a quick highlight of 60 pages of stuff here and a preview of coming attraction. Folks have seen this map before, I think. This is the geographic representation of the database that underlies all the work, all the issues collected by the task force and the projects identified as potential ways to ameliorate, not solve, important there to recognize, not solve problems, but to make the impact less severe. And you can get to that on anastad.com, GIS and many other gurus, Doug Anastad, on his website. And those points summarize, if you click on each point, you can get to the detail underlying each one of those issues or projects. And you look at that and you say, well, where should the township start? And this was kind of where we left us at the last meeting. And one of the ideas that we've kind of proposed here is aggregating by sub-watershed. Really important to look at these problems, not just on a township-wide basis, but to look at the kind of impact within a watershed. If you improve conveyance of the upper part of a watershed, you may well impact the problem much worse downstream in the watershed. So the more you do at the top of the watershed to infiltrate runoff higher up, the less worry there will be for people downstream. So taking a view on a sub-watershed basis, we think, is really important. And this is our matrix. We looked at this at our last meeting, a combination on the up and down axis of the degree of impact and on the across axis on how hard it is to fix. And we took each of the 20 or so identified sub-watersheds and came up with averages. And the notion here is that it gives the township some way to prioritize amongst the 200 or so issues that we now have in the database. And that hopefully that you can use this kind of analysis and the underlying data to then target your detailed engineering studies to say, okay, well, how do we really improve the situation for those folks in Trout, Maine, Northwest, which is our shorthand for the general area around Richards Road and Thomas Jefferson Road. So we think that that's a useful kind of way to focus the township action and to think about the things that you need to be putting in place in the current year budget or the coming budget that will that you'll need to design and implement projects to solve the issues in these watersheds. Can't really overemphasize too much, though, how important it is that the township is not the only player here, that PennDOT and private funding are also going to be real important sources or really important agencies to work with and sources of money. But we would look to the township to take a leadership role. And if you take all of the 120 or so projects, we've, and I'm going to not take great credit for this, it's really the work that Anne has done, taking the benchmarks of existing projects for which we have either, the township has either completed or has applied for grants with, pretty well engineered projects. And tried to say, okay, what would be the cost implications of doing all the projects that we've identified over a 10-year period? And we divided the projects into volume reduction and conveyance improvement, and those two together imply a capital cost of $10 million. Now, that's not the only stormwater-related expenditures you're going to have to make. You've already committed in your MS4 permit. We think that's about $4 million. I think that was 5 years, I'm not sure. And infrastructure, which we've just found has been highly stressed with our 1,000-year storm, that $3 million is probably light. So totaling that up gives you a $17 million capital need. If you just straight split that over 10 years, $1.7 million a year, and then the people to implement and manage, really important because nothing gets done if you don't assign the people to do it. Another $250,000 a year implies a stormwater budget of around $2 million a year. Which leads me to just a quick recap of where we were with finance. Nothing new here, but remember from the last time around, the task force is a strong believer that dedicated funding will really help you be effective. And that dedicated funding is something like a stormwater fee. We went over the benefits of that the last time we were here. And we've based that on comparable municipality benchmarks. It requires that 10-year plan to be fairly well fleshed out so you know how much money you need to raise. And that starting with our sub-watershed priorities that we identified in the report, and engineering for those could give you the detailed basis to come up with a 10-year capital plan that you can use for a stormwater fee. Now, we recognize you have other options to raise money, but that recommendation is still out there. And as far as making a decision, we do believe that if you have a detailed study of what would a fee look like in hand, to be able to make a decision on whether you go that way or not by the end of next year, I think if you set that requirement, you could do that. And then finally, the coming attraction, we haven't talked about this very much, but the ordnance and tree canopy groups have been working really hard and want to present to you at a coming meeting, hopefully even the next one, some tweaks to the zoning ordinance, the adoption of a woodland protection code based on the fact that the township is losing tree canopy. Tree canopy is really important for controlling runoff at the source, and that in comparison with other municipalities, there is opportunity for Tredyffrin. And the task force has developed some specs for a tree ordinance that would kind of strengthen the protection for existing tree cover beyond what there is right now in the subdivision ordinance, to make it apply to other wooded lots. And we've also have some recommendations for actually how to implement that, which is not onerous and would not require massive investment in resources. And so that's going to be posted really soon and hopefully presented to you. And then I think Township Engineer is on the last ordinance thing. There are some new county requirements for a stormwater ordinance. So hopefully soon we'll be able to present that to the board, to the public, and my own personal objective is to be able to hand this off to an organization within the township that leverages the work that all these folks on the task force have been doing. And hopefully that will give you a good start on what is clearly an urgent problem as we go back to Ida and Fred and the storms. It says one thing it did do, it said taking action urgently is important. So there we are. That's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. It was kind of a whistle-stop tour.
I just want to thank you for a great presentation.
Pardon me, I just need to use your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you've done along with the task force. It's really great. It's very informative, and I think citizens and the board really learned a lot. My only question is, not sure if you can answer it, but in the $2 million annual figure that was in the slideshow, we talked a little bit about, does the township want a high level of service? Does it want a moderate level of service? Does it want a low level of service? What would that $2 million in your estimation provide to the township?
We'll let Ann answer that.
I would say that's a moderately high level of service. It's what we identified as the task force. So the 120 township projects, it didn't count the partner projects or the PennDOT, because obviously that would be grants or matching funding. So that would be, I would say, between a medium and a high level of service. But we feel that the infrastructure numbers are understated because we only use like the 5-year budget. So I think if you increase that number, it'll force the level of service for the volume control down. If you can understand my point, there's 3 components. So the larger the amount needed for the infrastructure spending and for MS4, if you keep the total capital the constant, then the amount available for the flooding reduction is going to be less. So I think, if it would probably then be, if that amount went up, then I would say it would be more like a medium level of service then. If that helps, I hope. Thanks.
I'd also, would echo Supervisor Holt's comments about the great work of the Citizens Stormwater Advisory Task Force. And I know we have a close relationship with the task force in the township here with our staff and with supervisors. And it's been tremendous. And the fact that we're here tonight, and this is the preview. Remember, it's the preview. The real show is, the Broadway opening is coming, I think, at our next meeting, where the final report. The fact that we're here tonight, and I was sitting here and I was thinking about this. This township is committed to a comprehensive stormwater management program. We know we've got a ways to go. We know we've got to raise money, and we will. And the fact that we're actually talking about, to use Julie's phrase, alternative funding mechanisms, that also indicates how we're committed to this. So I just wanted to make that, and I hope you folks know that. I know you know it here, and I just wanted other folks, perhaps in the audience, to know that commitment. So thank you all again for doing a great job, and we look forward to hearing the final report.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you for the tremendous work. I'm excited to take the next steps here. We're already starting to do so with the money that we've dedicated to stormwater so far, and we have high-impact volume reduction projects underway or proposed at some of the highest priority sub-watersheds that you've identified, such as Trout Weedley and Trout Contention. We've also worked with our task force to get moving on some of our low-complexity projects. You might notice our public works crews out and about over the next couple of months. For a full list of the low-complexity in-house projects, please see our website. Our stormwater actions and plans are highlighted in the spotlight right now. And of course, for future planning, as pointed out, the money is what matters, and we did authorize our staff to take the work that the task force has done and to take a more in-depth review of all of our stormwater funding mechanism options. And we'll see the results of that work at a public meeting in the coming months. So thank you again to Ray and Ann and the full task force. We're now laying a strong foundation to tackle our stormwater problems in a proactive and data-driven way, and I'm very excited about it.
Mr. Chairman, I also, and I'm going to try not to repeat what everyone else has said, but I remember when we had our first conversation after you and Pete and Ray were here, and we said, you know, maybe we can put together a citizens task force that can get this done, and Chairman Wysocki was very involved, and you know, Chairman Holt and Chairman Holt, Supervisor Holt. Sorry, I'm already jumping the gun. Supervisor Gassi, and I got to tell you, it's worked out better than I ever imagined. I was optimistic, but not this optimistic. And you guys have done a great job. Worked hard. I think part of it was the folks that, you know, you were self-governed. I mean, this is truly, you know, government, you know, of the people, by the people, for the people, getting out and doing it, and just appreciate everything you guys have done, and looking forward to the final report, and thank you.
Yeah.
Chairman Wysocki, can I add a few words as well? I try not to, but it really does take a village to run a township. And, you know, we often see people come to the meetings and send us emails and look for places that they can make a difference. And stormwater has been, you know, the top priority throughout the last 4 years, and to watch our community come together and address it in this format is, we all owe you a big thank you.
Thanks to the supervisors for the kind words. The proof of the pudding now will be in your eating.
Well, I think you've seen some of the proof, and you're going to see it again as we go forward. So we have to, we'll move in that direction. So, Ray, as you said, we're all in it together. So thank you very much. Next is a motion to authorize staff to review and update the Parks and Recreation Ordinance. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Chair Wysocki. Not to steal any thunder, as you heard Supervisor Humble, she made a request in her liaison reports. It was shared with the boards. That's why it's on the agenda tonight. To formally, I guess, based on her criteria and some of the questions she wants us to look at, to authorize the staff to work with the solicitor and other boards and agencies as required to review the park and recreation ordinances to see if we can make some adjustments. Along those lines, we had some requests from some supervisors to look at some other creative ways to do some more things in the park, so we'll kind of incorporate all those into the review process. So we're asking for your authorization to do that.
Yes, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any board comment? Do I have any citizen comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is a motion to authorize credit card processing services. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff is looking for the board to ratify and approve a new providing agreement with Innerwear Development Company They're the company that services our credit card processing. US Bank used to support the platform, no longer does, so they're just changing their back end. Affects us slightly. We're expecting some delays over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Service outage, other than that, nothing else is changing substantively. So Solicitor's Office has reviewed the agreement and the provider accepted their changes, so that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Before we go on, I just have one question for you. When I hear the term service outage, and I just heard that
Means
term.
if you haven't paid your real
this-
estate tax bill, you won't be able to pay it online for the next 4 to 5 weeks. You'll have to come to the township building or mail us a check.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, that seems to be somewhat of an inconvenience, so we should maybe sort of try to get that information out there. I'm just thinking, you know,
I had Gabby update the website today.
Okay, great, you're ahead of me. Fantastic, that's good. So, do I have a motion to authorize credit card processing services?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Board comment? Citizen comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is a motion to approve proposal from Walsh Nicholson Financial Group for Township 457B Plan Services. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. June of this year, the board authorized staff to issue an RFP for our 457 plan services. Took me a little bit in getting that out, but I did. I received 7 responses to our RFP. Of those 7 responses, I reviewed every single one of them, whittled it down to 2 finalists, interviewed them with a few other staff members, and I'm recommending the board approve Walsh & Nicholson Financial Group, along with Emeritus, to provide our 457 plan services. Fee structure is as follows: record-keeping services, so just your base, all the back-end stuff that nobody sees, $65 per participant annually. The custodial fee and trading fees are 8 basis points on, whatever the asset balance is in the plan. And then there's an advisor fee of $2,500 annually. So we're expecting, based on our current plan assets and participant counts, we're estimating our yearly fee to be $19,400, which is a slight increase into what we're paying now, but we're going to have better services, more availability from our provider, get more from them in terms of education, opportunities for our employees. So that is my recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Do I have a motion to approve proposal from Walsh Nicholson Financial Group for Township 457B Plan Services? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any board comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have reviewed the proposal at length, and I appreciate the time that Joe took to look into this issue. I think it's really incredibly important to make sure our employees, frankly, get the best deal on their 457B, and that the costs are very low. And he did mention an increase, but the increase is only about $3,000, $4,000 a year. Very modest for the increased services. We're going to get the added benefits of educational programming, and from what I understand, a very good lineup of very low-cost funds that the employees are going to be able to invest in. So I thank him for that, and I think this is a good move.
Thank you, Supervisor Holt. Do I have any citizen comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Next is motion to authorize engagement of third-party inspection services. My notes say Mr. Baumann. I don't see Mr. Baumann here.
I'll take it.
Okay, Joe, you're up again.
This is actually going to be a request to ratify an agreement. Early last month, Matt found out one of his employees, one of our code inspectors, was going to be out on medical leave for, quite some time. In order to keep things moving and process in an efficient manner, we engaged a third-party inspection service, cost of $85 an hour. It was estimated that they were going to spend, I believe, 8 hours a week working for us. My understanding is that our inspector is going to be back full-time next week, so the engagement will be ending probably next week, if not shortly thereafter, but we had said it was not going to exceed $5,000. Happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Do I have a motion to authorize engagement of third-party inspection services?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any board comment? Any citizen comment? Hearing none? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. There is a motion to award cured-in-place pipe project. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Public Works Department is seeking the board approval of the bids for the 2021 cured-in-place pipelining of our sanitary sewer line. The township is looking to line the pipes on, some of the pipes on Cromer Avenue, Park Ridge Drive, and Long Lane. The sewer lining helps prevent infiltration and groundwater from entering the system. On September 21st, 2021 at 10 a.m., Tredyffrin Township received bids from contractors for the cure-in-place lining project at multiple locations. 5 bids were received and reviewed by township staff. Swerp Incorporated was our lowest bid at $113,900. The Public Works Department is recommending the project be awarded to Swerp. Swerp has also done projects for us in the past and worked very well for us, so I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Do I have a motion to award cured-in-place pipe project?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Board comment? Citizen comment? Hearing none? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next is a motion to approve proposal from Lobar Site Development for emergency repairs for slopes/drainage system for the Howellville Road Bridge over Norfolk Southern. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Wasaki and members of the board, before you tonight, we have a emergency proposal for repairs to the steep embankment slopes on the Bodine Road side of the Howellville Road Bridge. As everybody is aware, the Tropical Storm Fred and Tropical Storm Ida brought severe and extreme rainfall to the township in August and September. Several of the newly installed inlets suffered from complete clogging on the surfaces from debris and gravel coming down the hillsides from Bodine and Howellville Road and the excessive flows. As part of that, water overtopped the embankment and scoured out down to the railroad tracks. So we've been working with our team, design team, and with Norfolk Southern, who still has not signed off on the project, on what those emergency repairs and upgrades would look like to the drainage system. So we have a proposal for Lobar, from Lobar Site Development, for $169,455, along with some additional costs for maintenance and protection of traffic, depending on the exact nature of whether we're closing the road or we're flagging the operation. So the total cost that we're asking tonight is not to exceed $196,455. We've also spoken to PennDOT just to kind of clarify on the cost on this. This project was a retro reimbursement. Since we have not closed out the project, these repairs, as verified from PennDOT, would still fall under the retro reimbursement program. There is 80% funding from the state, from PennDOT, and it would be 20% from the township. So just wanted to clarify under that. And there's a little bit of work in the intersection that's just outside of our original project limit, so there might be just a slightly above that 20% contribution from the township, but roughly 80-20 split. So if anybody has any questions, we can certainly answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I have a motion to approve the proposal from Lowbar Site Development for emergency repairs for slopes drainage system for the Howellville Road Bridge over Norfolk Southern?
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and I have a board comment. Steve, Mr. Burgo, when I was reading your summary, I got to the point where you said that would be part of the 80-20 split. I was really a happy person at that point. Like a smile just came over my face, you know. Do we have any citizen comment?
Well, I did have one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is, so what happens if Norfolk Southern decides that, they're going to sit on it and, do we have any recourse to doing any emergency work, or do we just have to keep waiting for them?
I didn't hear the entire thing of what you said.
Sorry, I'll speak louder. So I was just wondering, I heard that we have to wait for Norfolk Southern to also agree with this or approve it. And sometimes they don't move as fast as they could. So do we have any sort of plan B in case they sit in it and this issue does not get resolved in the near future?
Well, I think that we've already reached out to Norfolk Southern with the work to be done, and we've talked to Lowbar Site Development, so we've talked about procurement of the materials, so we know the timing, and we're still trying to get this work done in 2021 to have it completed before the end of the year. So we think that we're going to check back in with Norfolk Southern later this week, but we do expect that they'll be fairly quick to respond, because they too want to close out their end of the project as well, probably by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. It helps that they have an incentive too.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Burgo.
Sure.
Mr. Burgo, in your supporting documents and what you stated today, was that this was caused by excessive debris from Bodine and Howellville Road clogging the sewer drains, the mud, the leaves, the sticks, the trash. Is this likely to happen again the next time these sewer drains get clogged?
As part of the project, we have some repairs that we're doing to the slopes, but we also have some upgraded improvements to the drainage structures on the roadways themselves to try to, we have some additional curbing there where there's some sections of the road that we were observing where some of the debris was coming off the residential properties freely and on the edge of the road, so that will help define the road edge and keep some of that debris at bay. And secondly, we just have some additional redundant inlets that we're placing upstream to catch some of that water. There's a lot of cross flow coming from Bodine Road and down Howellville Road that kind of just is crisscrossing the road from the higher elevation area. So if we can pick some of that water up, the system has no problem whatsoever conveying the water, because as soon as we open those inlets in Tropical Storm Ida, when I drove by there, we had cleared off some of the inlets, and it was taking all the water down towards the railroad tracks and the swale that exists. It had no capacity issues. It's just that it had some debris that was basically a lot of debris that was clogging those inlets. So to answer your question, I think we have that covered with this proposal with some of the additional elements that are added. But that's always a concern. We saw that throughout the township for a lot of our inlets during that height of that storm. There was just a lot of material washing down and covering those inlets, so they couldn't do their job.
I just want to make sure, I think you understand what I mean, that once we make this repair, this is not likely to happen again, so that we're not repairing it constantly.
It's the easiest way to say this is this repair should make that less likely and basically less frequent unless we get these types of 1,000-year events on a more reoccurring, interval.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any more board comments? Do I have any citizen comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is a motion to authorize engineering department to advertise and receive bids for the Pew Road Culvert Replacement Project. Again, it's at a point between West Valley Road and Valley Forge Road. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Wasaki and members of the board, the board is, as the board is aware, we had talked about earlier, Pew Road remains closed after these two latest tropical storms due to deterioration of the Pew Road culvert and some undermining of the roadway. It was recommended that the road be closed for safety, for public safety reasons. We do have a project, the design is already completed, to replace the existing culverts with a single cell structure. That project is basically finished design, and we have submitted permits to DEP. We've engaged the utility companies, Aqua and Pico. We're actually meeting with Pico on site tomorrow to be talking about the required utility relocations for the gas line. And what we're asking for tonight is we're continuing that process. We expect that the permits to be in hand from DEP later this month, and to work out the process with Pico on the utility line relocations. So we're asking the board to consider let the staff advertise and receive bids for this project. And we expect that we would be doing that later this fall, and receiving bids from contractors later this year and awarding in the early part of 2020, and then moving into construction in 2022. We'd be moving into construction, with that particular project. So if anybody has any questions, we can certainly answer that. And this is a project too, just to say, is we have been monitoring this culvert for some time. It is identified under the 2019 bond funding. We do have funds in the budget for this particular project.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I have a motion to authorize the engineering department to advertise and receive bids for the Pew Road culvert replacement project that's between West Valley and Valley Forge Road? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other board comment? Do I have any board comment?
As Mr. Burgo mentioned, this improvement will reduce debris clogging and provide better functioning of the stream under the roadway. It's in a higher priority sub-watershed identified by our task force, Trout Hammer Hollow. And to the residents impacted by the road closure, which includes myself and my elementary kids' bus route, hang tight. It's better to do the full fix rather than the quick one, which would cost more township dollars, and it would require us to shut the road down twice. I'm hoping we can move forward as quickly as we can on this project.
Thank you, Supervisor Gussie. And any citizen comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is a motion to authorize staff to resubmit the PEMA BRIC, B-R-I-C grant. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Wasaki and members of the board, as the board may realize, in 2020, we asked the board to allow staff to submit a FEMA BRIC grant application. As part of that, it was a shared cost of 75% for FEMA if approved, 25% for the township. The project that was considered was in the upper Trout Creek watershed of the upper Weedley branch. So it was going to conceive doing stormwater improvements on Woodcrest, upper Weedley, and the Willis Lane and Hardwick areas of the township. Infiltration systems and other volume control systems to reduce the flow of water into that section of the sub-watershed of Trout Creek, with many residents who have stormwater concerns down below there. That grant was reviewed by FEMA earlier this year, and we did hear this summer that we were not considered in this current round for funding, but they did give us some comments, and they did say that if we were interested, we should certainly consider resubmitting an application in the next round. So we're looking at different funding options, and we think that project is still a very important project for the Trout Creek watershed, and we would basically ask the board to allow staff to basically submit a revised and updated FEMA BRIC grant application later this year before the November deadline to FEMA for consideration. Grant decisions would not be made till summer of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I have a motion to authorize staff to resubmit the PEMA BRIC grant? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Burgo, I have a critical question for you, and I knew this when you first submitted the grant application. What does the acronym BRIC stand for?
The FEMA brick grant application, I think we had gone over last year, was a,
See, you can't find it, I got them, no.
You have it, see, you have it from last year.
I should have it, right.
But I think it's, if I remember correctly, it was building resilient infrastructure.
Yes, that's it. In other words, resilient infrastructure. The idea is you don't want yesterday's infrastructure going in. Theoretically, you'd be looking to tomorrow's infrastructure to help deal with the challenges of these storms. So, in any event, I had to ask that question. Do I have any more board comment?
I just want to point out that this is an area that we're seeing continuous problems after intense storms. This project would reduce water volume to Upper Weedley, Harwick, Willis, Woodcrest, and Pew. And these are the types of projects we need, ones that will hold and reduce water volume at the top of the watersheds. So I absolutely support this. I'm glad it's in our 5-year plan, and hopefully we can get the FEMA BRIC funding to reduce the township cost.
Thank you, Supervisor Gussie. Any citizen comments? Hearing none? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Next is something that all of us and a lot of folks in the audience have been waiting for. Next is a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-22 to authorize fire company capital contribution. Supervisor Gussie.
I am very pleased about the resolution before us, which is a joint resolution with Easttown Township to financially commit to Phase 1 of Berwyn Fire Company's infrastructure efforts. This is a true demonstration of collaboration. Not only have we been working with Easttown Township and our fire companies at our regular fire EMS and infrastructure committee meetings, but this resolution alone was co-written by the solicitors of both townships. That's pretty darn cool. So before getting into the details, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been involved in this effort, which is many, for staying positive through the process, being forthright with each other along the way, and putting in the work needed to overcome the challenges we have faced and we will continue to face to find our path forward to addressing our fire EMS infrastructure needs. This has already required many dozens of hours of work for a group committed to advancing the safety of our townships. This resolution states that Tredyffrin and Easttown together commit to the joint sum of $4.5 million as a not-to-exceed amount, representing 50% of the estimated hard costs for the renovation project of the existing Berwyn Fire Company station at 23 Bridge Avenue. Tredyffrin's proportion of this funding is $3.15 million, representing 70%, which is based on our parity equation with Easttown. If the project ends up falling below $9 million in hard costs, the remaining balance of the contribution will assist in Phase 2, which is to develop a more permanent substation in Tredyffrin. The resolution also states that we will begin developing an intergovernmental cooperative agreement with Easttown with input from Berwyn Fire Company to detail and memorialize the concrete steps forward. I'm happy to answer any questions. I see many Berwyn Fire Company members in the audience. Thank you for coming out to show your support. I look forward to seeing this project through. And Mr. Duraco, please feel free to add any technical details that I may have missed.
Sure. At the request of Supervisor Holt, he asked me to lay out some additional detail for the board so they know. So the plan, in terms of what, impact this has for the township, the $3.15 million represents about 17% of our current fund balance, which at the end of 2020 is estimated to be a little over $18.5 million. Our current fund balance levels sit at 81.4% of our 2021 general fund operating budget. This would theoretically, if all else stays equal, drop that number to 67.6%, which is still well in excess of our fund balance policy goal of between 30 and 35%. Additionally, and we'll work closely with Berwyn fire company on this, but at this point, I don't think we're probably expecting construction to begin probably until 2023 at this point, just because of the engineering design that they'll do with the final, building there, and so the money will be drawn down similar to a construction contract. So when they get a pay application from their contractor, they'll submit an invoice to us in Easttown, and we'll pay them accordingly to help them. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Appreciate that. Do I have, and thank you Supervisor Gussie for all your work on this, but I'm going to get into that here in a second. Do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-22 to authorize fire company capital contribution? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. And do I have board comment? And I normally don't want to do this, but I'm so proud.
Yes, Chairman Wozaki, thank you.
I am so proud of this group who worked to get this done. So I chuckled to myself. I wrote a few notes here. And I said, yeah, just like Supervisor Gussie said, 2 townships cooperating to help fund the fire company. That's what you do. That's what you got to do. You have to do that in today's world, or you don't get anything done. You don't keep your township, you don't keep your people safe, you don't keep them healthy, and that's what we did here. Now, I was there at the birth, not quite at the birth. There were people who preceded me 6 years ago, and here we are. This to me is a historic evening. I mean, you'll have to forgive me. Sometimes I get into a little bit of hyperbole, but I do believe this is truly historic, because the people who worked on it, the committees, Supervisor Gussie,